What's up, guys, and welcome back to another Odd Popcorn for That review. I'm Chris,
And I'm Nick.
and we are here today to talk about the new movie Nimona, just released on Netflix. So this is like an animated sci-fi fantasy type story, and it was directed by Nick Bruno and Troy Quane, and stars Chloe Grace Moretz and Riz Ahmed in the main voice roles. Uh, so yeah, just dropped on Netflix. Not a whole lot of fanfare. I didn't hear a whole lot about it beforehand. I just found out about it and watched it. What do you think about this one?
Thought it was okay. It was a pretty generic story, I thought. It was pretty silly at times, but I guess it's a kids movie, so that's to be expected. But I mean, it's kind of just, society's afraid of somebody or something, and then something happens and they're accepting of it. It was kind of the big overall thing, I thought.
So we disagree a little bit. Or I don't know if it's
Okay.
disagree, but I love this thing.
Did
It's
you?
like one of my favorite movies of the year. Yeah,
Wow. Yeah, no,
yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
I didn't hate it, but I didn't think it was
yeah.
anything like special.
That's funny. I knew one day we'd run into something where we disagreed more than we, uh, not really opposite feelings. Just I feel a lot more strongly about it.
I mean, there
Uh,
were certain aspects that I like. I like the setting of like medieval cyberpunk type place. It's like
yeah, it's
world
sort of
they're
like
in.
yeah, medieval meets like ultra futuristic, high technology and everything. I
Yeah.
thought it was cool aesthetic, and I like it depends a lot on how you feel. For one thing about the animation, like the animation style is uh, kind of unique. Like it's kind of like halfway between 2D and 3D without being. It's not like the Spider Verse style
Mhm.
thing. I really wouldn't draw any comparisons there actually, but it just has that like kind of 2D style, but obviously 3D rendered. But for me, like I think the voice cast did a really good job. Especially like the main two, I already like both of those actors, especially Riz Ahmed. I don't know how much you've seen with him, but like on Nightcrawler, I thought he was great, and
Yeah. I
The
watched.
Sound of Metal.
I haven't watched that, but the Night of he was really good in.
Yep. Um, but and also Frances Conroy, the one who did the voice of the director. I know her from he's like the kind of the matriarch of the family on the show 6 Feet Under, and she was like Arthur Fleck or Joker's mom on the Joker movie
Yeah.
that came out like a
I
couple years
mean,
ago.
she's been in a ton of stuff. I think she's in
Been
like
on a ton of stuff, yeah.
the like American Horror Story as well.
And I don't know if you looked it up, but Beck Bennett is the voice of Sir Tadius,
Yeah, I
which
did
is
look that
like
up.
yeah. So like it's one of the guys from Saturday Night Live, but also he's done a couple other like interesting things here and there. There was a movie a couple years ago called Greener Grass, real weird like avant-garde comedy that he was in. I really like a lot. But but yeah, just the general like. So I do agree. It's a really simple story, and the idea of like, um, you know, people being kind of turned into the enemy that aren't really. There's nothing to really fear there, and people's like misunderstanding of people that are different from them. That story has been done before and everything. Um, there was something about this that just made it different enough for me, or maybe it's not. Maybe it's not that it was different enough. Maybe it's just that like the parts that were there were so well done that I just had a blast with it. And like I can kind of see maybe not loving that type of humor. I don't always, but for some reason here the humor really landed with me like 100% of the time. Uh, so that was a big thing too, is just the humor from it, and just Nimona is the star of the show, so it kind of all comes down to how you're going to feel about this movie. All comes down to how you feel about the Nimona character, and I really bought into the Nimona character whole heart, and so the emotional bits work for me, and just all the way through, I was just connecting with it all the way through, and it's real compact, so like um, they wrap the whole thing up. If you don't count the trailer, or if you don't count the credits at the end, I think they wrap the thing up in like 83 minutes. So
Yeah.
real short, concise little story. It's simple.
Yeah, going
I'm
into it,
gonna
it said that it was like an hour and 45 minutes, and I was like, ooh, that feels like it's a little long, and it did for me at a
no
couple of points. But then it was like the trailer or the credits were 17 minutes long,
right.
which was
Yeah,
very
yeah, 15,
strange.
16 minutes. Yeah. So just to give an idea of it, this is like a little, um, plot summary of the movie, but it says when a knight in a futuristic medieval world is framed for a crime he didn't commit, the only one who can help him prove his innocence is Nimona, a mischievous teen who happens to be a shape-shifting creature who he's sworn to destroy. So, the general idea is this kingdom was established like 1,000 years ago by their queen Glorith, and it sort of all starts with um, there's a this giant black beast that I guess like destroys the village or something, and she has to put up this giant wall. She becomes queen and puts up this giant wall and swears to protect everybody from these monsters forever. And there's this she sets up an institute called the Institute for Elite Knights, and there's this giant statue of Glorith with this sword pointed out, and so when we meet like our main character, Riz Ahmed's character, who is named Ballister Boldheart, um, he's in a relationship with this other character, Ambrosius Goldenloin, who's played by Eugene Lang,
What?
by the way. Did you see? I'm sure you saw that.
No,
Do
I
you know who
didn't
that is?
actually. No, it sounds familiar.
He's the guy from that like BuzzFeed spin-off thing, the Try Guys. It's like
Hmm.
3 or 4 guys that. Anyway, they actually I learned that they modeled the character after him.
Hmm.
So like when they were modeling the character, they chose him so that he's the only one that auditioned for it. Like it was just pretty much made,
Was his last
literally for
name
him.
Golden Loin or Golden Lion?
It's Loin.
Was it? Oh, okay. I thought it was Lion.
No, they all have really kind of silly names, or not silly names, but like interesting. Ambrosius Goldenloin and
Yeah.
Sir Tadius Sureblade
Yeah, and the Golden Loin character is like a direct descendant of
of Glorith.
Glorith, yeah.
And so the whole deal is their current queen is kind of going back on a little bit of what Glorith initially set up 1,000 years ago, which is the Institute for Elite Knights was all direct descendants, and she's trying to mix it up a little bit, and anybody can be a hero now. And so her move to do that is to give knighthood to the first commoner ever, which is our main character, Ballister Boldheart. And in this, well, we are getting into spoilers now. I think you should really watch this movie and stop it here. If you,
Yeah, watch it if you want to.
yeah, different answers here, uh, so in the ceremony where she's knighting him, his sword, she knights him, and then his sword like goes off like a weapon, fires this laser and kills her, and he's immediately blamed for it and everything, and we can tell he's being set up, and so the whole thing from the whole rest of the movie is he meets Nimona. I can't even remember what like the event is that he meets Nimona, but he meets Nimona, and I think she kind of seeks him out because she sees that she sees the potential of like either this is a guy who's rebelling and killing the queen, or he's being falsely accused or whatever, but he's the kind of guy that's like going to be a villain now, and I'm looking for somebody to be their sidekick.
Yeah.
So she goes and like seeks after him, and that's the majority of the movie is her acting as his sidekick as he tries to exonerate his name, and she sort of forces herself into the situation. But anyway, the very end, when I can see it being this part, a little cliche, but I enjoyed the way they did it. But at the very end, you find out that the black monster that Glorith was trying to protect the city from all along is Nimona. So she met Nimona as a little girl, which Nimona was like trying to fit in with all these different animals. Like she tried to be a deer, and none of the deer want to hang out with a pink deer, and this shows like a little montage of like her interacting with all these different animals and trying to look like them and be like them, and nobody wants to accept her. And then when she finally turns into a little girl, another little girl that she meets at a well. I don't know if it's really not really wishing well, right? That's just
I don't
like
think
part of
so.
a story. But she meets this little girl, and they become really good friends, and you see them like grow up together a little bit, and then at some point someone sees Nimona, and her like she reveals her Nimona reveals her secret to Glorith at some point, and so they whenever they play and it's just them, they're playing as she's shapeshifting and doing whatever she wants, being all these different a bear and there's certain animals that keep coming up over and over again, a bear and a armadillo and a rhino and a wolf, I
Sparrow.
think,
Yeah.
sparrow. Yeah, there's a handful of animals that she turns into. I guess she can turn into a lot of things, but I'm sure the animators were like, give us a about 10, and that's about the max. Uh, and but somebody sees her like playing with a giant pink bear, and is obviously concerned for her or whatever, and and like the village teams up against Nimona with pitchfork. I mean, it really quickly turns into like a pitchfork situation where everybody's about to destroy Nimona, and that's when I guess she something happens where like a
Yeah,
lantern is overturned.
they're like trying to circle her and they're hitting her with little pitchforks and stuff like you said, and then I think she's in bear form and somebody throws a torch at her and then it just like lands on some hay and sets the entire village on fire.
Yeah, everything catches on fire all of a sudden, and she obviously gets blamed for that. So she's got to, and that's where the whole black monster story comes from. So um, at the end, she's so like full of anger and everything over. There's a situation where, her and Ballister have gotten so close and everything, and then there's a moment where it looks like he's questioning his trust in her, and because he finds out that she might be the monster, and she's starting to worry about the Glorith side of the story being the legitimate one, and and so at the end, she's so full of rage over nobody accepting her, not even Ballister. She thought she finally found a friend again, and she turns herself into that black monster again, which I thought was cool looking. I don't know, not
Yeah.
everybody would, but it's like an interesting looking. It's not doesn't follow like nicely into some textbook like big giant monster, but but this thing just goes on this rampage through the city, and they're about to uh, the director, who is the one that we find out has framed him. So she's like the kind of the, I guess, in charge of all the knights. Is that
Yeah,
the
it's
understand? I mean,
I guess
it's kind of
she's
my
like the
understanding.
director of the institute and the queen is more like a figurehead it seemed like.
Mm-hmm. So the director is the one that used framing him to kill the queen because she didn't believe in this idea of giving commoners a chance, and giving knighthood to a commoner. And so that was her, power move or whatever. So when she sees this monster uh, destroying everything, she's like, we gotta stop this, and she turns these like defense cannons around toward the city, and she's gonna fire those cannons and kill Nimona, and realizing that there's gonna be like massive casualties and destruction to her own city, and Nimona's about to, out of just sadness and anger, and they're dropping bombs on her and all this stuff. She's about to just fall onto the blade of the statue of Glorith standing there, which was like there's a scene in the early flashback where Glorith is standing there as a little girl pointing the sword at her. The moment that she like kind of is being betrayed, or Nimona's being betrayed, and so this looks just like that, and she's about to just fall on the sword and kill herself, and Ballister comes up and blocks her with just one hand, which I guess she's not like putting any pressure. It's just like she's about to fall onto it and let the gravity do the work, and he puts that hand out there to stop her, and so she turns into a human one last time, and it looks like everything's gonna be all right, and then but the cannon's about to fire, and so she turns into a like the form of a giant phoenix
Yeah.
and flies straight into that cannon and blows herself up into a million sparkly pink bits, and and we think it's all over for her, and then it's like it flashes forward to like years later, and we can see like that destroyed the wall, and so now it's all open, and there's like fields of, it's like there wasn't anything to wall off. It's like this pretty like mountain landscape, and they've made a like a trade route, and Nimona's being honored as like a hero, and both her and Ballister are seen as heroes now, and Ballister's repaired his relationship with Ambrosius, and then uh, he's like, Ballister's kind of feeling sad about Nimona, and he goes back to their old like lair, so to speak, and off screen she appears one last time to him being startled, and it cuts him off. He's like, "Holy sh!" And that's the credits at the end.
Yeah.
So tight little movie. I thought there was a lot to like about it, and if you can, like I said, it all depends on your taste and how you feel about like the animation style, and I think especially the character Nimona. I mean, is that the part that for you was like the more polarizing part? Like if
A
like the
little bit.
humor and the Nimona character, like I think you kind of either like that or
Yeah, I think that was a little bit of it, and like I said, the story just being like super generic. Uh,
Yeah.
and there was like a couple of things that I feel like they broke their own little rules that they had kind of made.
Oh,
Like
how's that?
so there's the scene where Nimona and Ballister are running from the cops, because that's what the knights are. They're just cops. Uh,
Hmm.
she gets like shot in the leg, and they take it out, and then like blood spurts, and he wraps a little thing around it. But then later, when she shifts into Ambrosius and gets stabbed through her torso, she's fine. Nothing's wrong with her at all. I was like, what? That doesn't really make sense.
Yeah, it does. It does. It's not clear about if she's like completely. I mean, I guess by the end of the movie, it's like okay, she's completely immortal. You know.
Yeah,
Um,
it was strange because I mean I get it's a PG movie, so like when Ballister got his arm cut off, there was no blood. There's no blood when she gets stabbed in her abdomen, but I mean there's that blood when they take out the arrow, so I don't know. That was something that was
I
kind of like
think
that doesn't
she's
make
well, and
sense.
there is a point where she like he pulls the arrow out of her leg, and she's like, uh, he's like, "Does that not hurt?" And she's like, "Yeah, it hurts," but it's almost like she's like she's not impervious to pain or whatever. It's like maybe she just heals really fast, and also like either pain's not that bad for her, or she's just like lived for over 1,000 years, and so it's like you start to get used to everything after a certain amount of time or something like
Yeah,
that. I'm not because
that
she's
could be.
probably been shot at a bunch in her 1,000 years time. Like it's that probably wasn't the last time she was shunned from somewhere or something like that.
Mhm.
Because she's not like kept caged up. I was kind of thinking like what has she been doing
Yeah,
in the
that's
time
another thing.
between?
I was
Like it's
like,
a long time between.
it's been 1,000 years, and what has she been doing this entire time? Just being a,
They don't
just
tell you, yeah.
yeah,
Uh,
just being
and
a
she
little
just says she
street
chose
rat.
him because she was bored, which is really like the real thing is she would needed companionship and somebody to kind of see her for who she really was and not see her um, as an enemy or a monster or something like that. Because whenever somebody calls her a monster, that's like her trigger word.
Yeah.
she's gonna go Super Saiyan on him. But a couple things I thought were interesting. Literally just a couple, but like this was like one of the last Blue Sky Studios projects. So the people that did like the Ice Age movies and stuff like that,
Oh,
and then Disney acquired them and then closed them down.
of
So
course.
this was almost like didn't happen, and then it was like 70% done, and so Netflix picked it up and did it. And then the other thing, uh, well, yeah, one of the things I said, which is that Eugene Yang was like the inspiration for that character design, and so he was like there was no audition process. It was just like you're the one that's going to get the role,
Hmm.
and we didn't say, but it's based on a graphic novel by the same name from 2015, which I looked at the nothing against the graphic novel or anything, but I liked the direction they took the animation style because the graphic novel is like really really simple,
Mm,
just the most minimal animation or not animation, but the art style is really really minimal.
yeah.
But I guess that's about it. What would you rate this thing?
I mean, I didn't hate it. It was okay. I guess I'd give it maybe like a five. It's kind of average.
We do disagree.
Okay.
I am tempted to give this a 10 out of 10 because I have
Oh
no
wow.
complaints at all. But I think I'd give it like a 9, like a 9.5, because I kind of reserve tens for like movies that I'm gonna be thinking about the rest of my life.
Yeah.
Um, for the most part. But I mean, I have been known to be over generous with the way I give like probably too many 10 out of 10s out. But uh, it's hard when I don't see, take this movie out of the equation, and just in general, like if I don't really have anything to complain about and I'd have to do a lot of work to think of something to complain about,
Yeah.
it's hard for me to be like, well, and if I enjoyed it a lot too, like I could watch a movie and not have hardly any complaints, but also like I'm never gonna watch it again. So is that a 10 out of 10? Probably not. So rating things is difficult, but yeah, I'm gonna go 9.5, man. I really strongly recommend it.
Okay.
So two very different, two very different. That's what's so great about movies.
Right.
It has their own little takeaway.
And I
So
just
yeah,
like I said,
no, what's that?
the generic story, like it just kind of felt like How to Train Your Dragon a little bit too. Like the same kind of story, except for this one I was more geared towards. I don't know if it was meant to be, but I guess since there was so many like uh, LGBT relationships and stuff, that was kind of the overall message is like them being afraid of things like that and then it being okay. Like that's kind of what
That
I
was
took
certainly
from it.
my interpretation. Like especially with her being like a shapeshifter,
Mhm.
and then everybody judging her for being a shapeshifter, and that especially that whole montage of her trying to fit in with all the different animals and never finding anywhere to fit in because she's like, it's like it can't just be that just because she's pink. It's like kind of a visual metaphor for there's something different about her.
Yeah.
And also I think like the shapeshifter part of it, you could interpret that a couple different ways, and I mean I think they probably want it to be left for interpretation, but you could certainly see that as like something about people who are gender non-binary, or something about people who or just maybe just trans people, or gay people, or you could kind of, I mean I think it's probably meant to be a little bit of an open, like a blank slate there where you can kind of
Yeah.
fill in your blank, but it's just like the idea of people being seen as different, and that making people sort of villainize them or seeing them as the other, and seeing that as a bad thing or whatever. So I think that probably was the message. And you even taking it at face value, I mean, these are two people. Like even if you just didn't interpret anything into the movie, two people that were sort of wrongfully accused of doing something that they didn't do. They were framed, or they were, because of, but it does tend to be like they're different, especially in her case. Like the difference about them is the thing that makes them seem more guilty to people, I
Yeah.
guess. Uh, but yeah, it is not the most. I mean, the funny thing about you saying the thing about How to Train Your Dragon, I immediately think about the fact that the Sea Beast, which was another Netflix animated movie that came out a couple years ago, it has a lot, even well, a lot more in common than this with How to Train Your Dragon, and I loved that too. Like, I mean, maybe not quite as much as this, but I thought that was like a little hidden gem in Netflix too. Like, I think Netflix kind of got a bad rap over time of a lot of their animated, like straight to Netflix animated stuff was sort of mediocre, and but I heard enough good things about the Sea Beast to watch it and just love that. So I think if you can be derivative of things, or you can borrow points that aren't completely original, and like I said, as long as I like the package enough, like you can look past that a little better, or if there's enough of a unique spin on it or whatever. So
Yeah. I agree.
anyway, that's the deal. We're gonna try we're gonna try doing something a little different for the next video. So I won't say anything about that yet. But guys, if you like this kind of content and you like talking about movies, maybe if you have seen Nimona, comment below about what you thought about Nimona, or maybe your like some of your favorite animated movies from the last couple of years. And yeah, like the video and subscribe if you haven't already. And yeah, we'll see you guys next time. Thanks for watching.
See ya.